I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector Podcast. And I have joining me today, I have a brand new guest. I have got Rob Labbé, who is the CEO of MMISAC. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, Michael, great to be here.
Before we get started on everything, let's explain to everybody what the organization MMISAC is all about and your role in it.
Sure. MMISAC is an industry not-for-profit association that brings mining companies, suppliers, and others who work in the industry together to share intelligence on what's happening from a cyber risk perspective, also to sit down and figure out best practices for risk mitigation and for control and program design to help ensure that we have a resilient industry going forward.
Wonderful. So, folks, what we're going to talk about today, we talk about risk on a mining project all the time. We talk about management risk. We talk about project risk, what could go wrong on a project, jurisdictional risks, what can happen within a jurisdiction. It'll slow or impede a project from moving forward, geopolitical risks. This one, cyber risk and cybersecurity, unfortunately, is becoming a greater concern, but it's not on anybody's bingo card right now. So that's why we brought Rob in to talk about this as we go forward. On an outside picture looking in, I like to consider this a bit of a bull market type of thing, in that if we were still in an ugly bear market as we had been for a number of years, cybersecurity wouldn't be as great of a risk because there's no need to kick us when we're down. Now that we're getting back up off the mat, it's becoming more and more of a risk that not only do the mining companies need to be aware of, but investors need to be aware of as well, so that they can ask appropriate questions to make sure the people that they're investing their money in have taken the appropriate steps to mitigate the risk. Rob, what are the risks?
It's interesting because the risk shifts as a company moves through its life cycle from exploration through a project and into production. But in all stages, the big risk is one to the operations resilience. Can they continue doing what it is they do safely and with it in a productive way? This is particularly relevant to junior miners for two reasons. Junior miners tend to be more agile and creative when it comes to technology and are open to exploring some of the more leading, if not bleeding edge technology options for their projects versus some of the larger majors and larger mid-tiers. However, they're also more exposed. If you're a large mining company with dozens of operations, if one gets shut down due to a cyber technology incident, that's annoying. If you're a single mine operator and that one mine gets shut down due to a cyber incident or technology problem, that's catastrophic. So the risk profile changes a little bit as we go through.
Yeah, it would. It's more catastrophic for a smaller player than the bigger player. But the damages could be the same across the board.
It is. The challenge is the smaller companies, where a large major may have a cybersecurity team to identify the risks, mitigate them, and deal with incidents. A smaller junior may have an outsourced provider doing it. They may have one person or two people. So while the risks are the same, the capacity of a junior miner tends to be a little bit lower.
Yeah, and you can't discount the facts that some of these nefarious types out there are willing to go after the smaller player. Like we're the Prospector News is a small media company, And in the past, we've had some, cybersecurity incidents. We've upped our security. They don't happen as much anymore. That's not that doesn't say that they can't happen again. But we had one where they put a bunch of links in our posts and that, and you know they were all going to Russian websites, or at least that was the language that the background link was written in. So it can be just really small things that are annoying that took us down for less than 24 hours until we scrubbed it and went back to an original thing. But again, if you're outsourcing your materials, this could shut you down for several days.
Yeah, and it is. And when we look at it, it's actually the attackers prefer the smaller operators and the juniors. And that is because of the lack of resources. And we've seen that over a couple of years in the Canadian mining sector, where we've had some small single mine operators shut down for weeks at a time due to a cyber incident. And they prefer that for a couple of reasons. Is number one, if they can bring production to zero at a small operator might be more likely to pay a ransom to get operations back up and running, which is the objective, versus a large company where maybe if you shut down 10% of their production, you don't have that same leverage to get a payment. The other thing, attackers are looking for is often smaller juniors or acquisition targets. And so with the hope of embedding yourself in a small organization, perhaps post-acquisition, you get brought into a bigger target that might have been more difficult to breach from the outside, but maybe use a smaller operator that's being acquired as a proverbial Trojan horse.
I see. So let's go through the life cycle of a mining company, right from an explorationist up to being a small miner. And let's talk about the various risks and what should be done to mitigate them, and the types of questions an investor who might be putting their dollars into these companies should be asking. So let's start out at the very basic grassroots. Let's talk about an exploration company. Let's define that as somebody that's going out. They're exploring their patch of land. They're looking to see if there's minerals there. They may have dropped a few drill holes in to prove their exploration thesis is correct, but they're still pretty much a bootstrap smaller operation.
Right. So at that stage, it's a small operation. There's not a lot of money, but luckily there's also not a lot of technology. And so at that stage, really what you're looking at is largely process security. So yes, you're going to want to make sure you use a company grade email. So perhaps sign up for services from Google or Microsoft in their small business category, which will give you some better built-in security than perhaps a consumer Gmail or Outlook.com or whatever account might give you, which is often free with your web hosting or what have you. So initially sign up for those things, let those features take care of you, but then it's process. It's when you get an invoice from one of your suppliers or your drill contractor, take the time to confirm that that's a legitimate invoice, particularly if something's changed. Oh my gosh, we've got a new bank account information, send the money here instead of there. It's really having the processes to make sure that those types of transactions are legitimate, because a small junior really can't afford to misdirect a payment to the wrong place. And so it's really about a bit of process, a bit of care, and a bit of due diligence at the junior level.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I know, again, drawing my organization into that, I guess these are be considered email phishing attacks, but,
Right.
I regularly get emails telling me there's a payment coming and they want to confirm my bank from somebody that I've never done business with. I get sent invoices that are from somebody I've never done business with. So there's all sorts of, and I guess that's kind of like a really simple cyber attack. They flood a million of these things out and figure that X percentage will screw up and give them the information that they want.
Right. And it's such a low cost attack for them. They don't need, if they do 1 million and one works, that's fine. That's good value for them.
Yeah, but that for an explorationist, that's the kind of attack that they're going to be seeing. These low level, low grade kind of phishing email types of attacks.
Yeah, at the beginning stage of exploration, where you're really out, working on your claim, trying to identify is there really something there or not. Uh, Doing a little bit of geology work, maybe doing a little bit of drilling, exploratory drilling. That really is your biggest risk. Is you're on a shoestring budget, maybe half of a shoestring, and so you've got to be careful that money doesn't get misdirected.
Okay, so let's say now this explorer has grown up a little bit. Now they're becoming a developer. They're drilling multiple holes. They're creating mineral resources. They're doing PEAs. They're trying to take the project that they have on their patch of land and determine that it's feasible for it to become a mine that will operate profitably. What kind of cybersecurity and threats are that type of a miner and operator going to be facing versus just that basic, phishing email attack kind of thing that the bear explorer is facing?
Right. So now the phishing bits never go away. We just add to it, right? So the earlier stuff never quite ever gets to leave you. But now, you're thinking, all right, we've probably got, getting into the tens to dozen, 20 employees. And now we're moving into that kind of small, medium business space from being that very small place. So we're thinking about things like now you're probably building up infrastructure and you're probably collecting data that has value. Now that you're doing more drilling, you've got data that reflects, hey, here's what you're finding. Obviously, you want to keep that confidential for now, so that when it comes time to find for the next stage, you're in a good negotiating position. You want to make sure, obviously, your employees now you're going to have some of those, so you're going to have more employee data that has to be protected. So you're really starting to build into the call it the infrastructure of a small company. And so now you want to look at things like maybe now one of your hires is a technology person that takes care of that for your dozen people or so. Again, you're going to want to use commercial packages designed for small businesses to do that and start to turn on some of the security features. Some of the things like multi-factor authentication that prompts you on your phone before you log in, because now data is becoming important. Now you want to start thinking about how do you secure your networks and start thinking about things that might impact resilience going forward. Even things as simple as, do we have two ways of communicating in the field? Maybe you've got a satellite option like a Starlink out there. Great. Do we have two in case one falls off the roof of the trailer and it gets backed over by a truck? right? Those kinds of things happen in that stage. So you start thinking about where are the technology failure points, and do we have a resilient option, a backup, so that we don't lose time drilling while we order a new Starlink base station, for example.
Okay, so you need to put redundant systems in your computers and your tools that you're using so that you're protected.
Yeah, as things go on. And so for the investor's perspective at this stage, at the first stage, the investors, most of their questions should be, hey, is there really something here? As we get to this stage and we think, okay, maybe this dog will hunt, well, now we're starting to ask questions around resilience. Do you have backups for technology? Is the critical exploration data you're collecting backed up, or is it on John's laptop? So, should something happen, which you don't want to do is lose all that data and have to redo it, right? So it's all about now identifying your critical assets and having plans in place to ensure that they're resilient.
And you got to make sure that that backup is off-site as well, do you not?
That's right.
Because like I remember this fondly when, I was first starting out. I was dealing with computer systems for dental offices. And I'm not technologically unique, but we always told everybody, back it up, take it home, back it up, take it home. Well, we had one dentist office that had a fire. Well, they backed up, but they lost their data because it was on disks in the office that got burnt.
Right. Yeah. And this is particularly important at this stage, right? Because a lot of the data is being collected in the field and you're outside and now you're subject to nature, right? And nature can be hard on equipment from time to time. So having that plan, whether it's backed up in a cloud service, or which is what most will do now, or take it off site in a physical media, you need to have a plan for that.
Okay, so we've taken our development company, we've discovered the dog will hunt, and they're going to become a mine. What do they need to be worried about now?
So now it's now it's some decisions, because again, as we've said, this we have to look at it from the perspective of how do we ensure our development project now continues unabated, right? We're not a mine yet. We're building a mine, and so now we're starting to bring in large number of partners, whether it be EPCMs, engineering firms. Every technology vendor known to mankind is knocking on our door and wanting to get their new whiz-bang AI, machine learning, quantum, whatever, deployed at our mine as a test case or what have you. And so we've got all of this happening. And again, now it's time to start thinking about and asking your engineering firms, how are you engineering in and designing in resilience? We may want to do autonomous vehicles because that'll save us some money, be more efficient. Great. What happens when the network is down? How do we engineer in something so we can continue production? We're also now starting to think about permitting in a big way. And so permitting, obviously, that ties you to social license and environmental groups. And some of those have been known to be involved in, if you're not doing a good job managing and building relationships with those groups, do they become potential adversaries? So now we're starting to build out what is our overall enterprise or company resilience scheme. Our network's getting bigger and more complicated. This is the point of time where investors should be asking, is there a cybersecurity and a cyber resilience plan for the project? How are you ensuring your engineering data and your engineering drawings are protected? How are you handling communities and community relations and social license? Who's doing the security bit? Now, this is a time where companies will often join MMISAC so they can get the intelligence and support from our teams in how they build forward and what their specific risks are. But there should be somebody or a firm or an outside firm that you've hired, not to say full-time, but even on a fractional basis, advising management and advising the board on security and risk. So those risks are in the risk matrix and work through. And an investor should want to see evidence that the board and management is getting that advice.
Okay. Now we've gone through all of this, we've developed, we've built the mine. Now we've got another new set of risks, but I would assume some of the earlier risks will have dropped off. Would they have not, or are we?
Not really.
Or we just keep adding the risks?
We just keep adding, unfortunately. Nothing goes away. We still have to deal with, phishing emails. Just now, instead of, 3 people at the company receiving them. So, if you get a phishing email that looks like it's from John, well, you're probably standing next to him, so you can ask him about it. Now we're a company of, several hundred people with a mine in production. And so we have more targets, more education, more awareness has to happen. There's more invoices going through, so it's getting harder to manage the risks of changes and things to there. So those risks just scale up. And so nothing gets to go away. You don't get to lose anything, unfortunately. And so now it's executing that plan. So you've got a resilience plan, you've got a mine in operation, you've got your security advisors who have helped you put in appropriate security controls at site and processes as well as in the office. Now the question comes in, does your resilience plan work? We might have a plan that says, hey, if this key piece of technology were to become unavailable, we would switch to a manual mode and run it. Well, have you done that ever? Do you know that works? Is that plan exercised and tested every year? In our office buildings, the law says we have to do a fire drill once a year. The reason for that's obvious, so that people know what to do in the event of a fire. If you've got a mine, you're required to do an evacuation drill regularly. Again, nobody argues that just makes sense. Well, when's the last time you've seen a fire in an office building, right? Cyber attacks are much higher frequency, so we should be testing that resilience plan regularly so hey, the mine can continue to operate if key corporate systems are unavailable. And we've got some kind of a plan should key site level systems become unavailable for some sort of production or maintenance of production. And we've seen where that's been successful, where companies have had crippling cyber attacks on the office side, but didn't lose a pound of production, where others have had much more minor cyber attacks and had to shut down for 3 or 4 weeks. So it really is, if you do the resilience well, that's your security blanket. This is also obviously the time you want to start thinking about cyber insurance to further help protect you should something happen.
Okay, explain what cyber insurance is and how does it actually end up working?
So, cyber insurance is typically a separate policy. Generally, can be gotten from the same broker that sells you your casualty and your property insurance and the other types of insurance you need for a mining operation. But what it's intended to do is help you cover the costs of responding to and mitigating to a cyber incident. They can be expensive to deal with. What it also does is gives you access to resources, because now obviously the insurance company has a vested interest in helping you resolve the cyber incident as cheaply as possible, because now they're paying for it. So they'll have a whole bunch of resources that are available to assist you that maybe a small mining company might not have access to organically. So it's a way of risk transference, of course, as all insurance is, but it also has the happy side effect of access to resources that may not be affordable for you as a small single mine operator.
Okay, so one of the things I've seen from this discussion is that as your company grows, the threat risk also grows. So the nefarious agents are they of equal size to your company as they grow, as it grows up? So you get, more aggressive actors as opposed to, just casual. I'm dicking around. I'm going to send out a million emails and see if one or two
I,
of them bite.
yeah, I think, like I said, as you get bigger, you don't lose the smaller threat actors. They just become, as your technology and as your ability to respond comes up, they just kind of get dealt with in background noise more effectively. But yeah, once you start, to be a major operator, particularly if you're in a booming segment, you know, gold is, rapidly approaching $4,000 an ounce right now, right? And so if you're a gold miner, the larger cyber criminal groups know you've got money, and so might you become a target to them? Absolutely. The other thing that might drive your targeting is media coverage of your sector. Occasionally rare earths become a big media item of discussion. That raises the risk for the rare earth miners because, again, people think there might be money there. And so, it becomes, the folks that are biggest risk are those, segments of the industry that are doing well
Okay.
in the
Now,
commodity cycle,
yeah,
right?
now,
Versus those at the bottom.
okay. Reading between the lines of what you're talking about, though, you're kind of focusing on the criminal element of the hackers, where they're looking for opportunity for a payout,
Yeah.
essentially. But that's not necessarily the case as to the actors. You mentioned earlier, we talked about environmental groups. Some of them use this as a means, a method to attack companies and delay their ability to become a mine and to create problems that would slow down their progress and make it more costly to them to proceed. I'm also going to assume, let's talk about the rare earths, but let's lump them into the critical metals category
Yeah.
as that becomes more and more a geopolitical hand grenade, so to speak. Pardon the warlike term. But do we now get state actors coming in? They're trying to shut down Western critical metals production because they work for an opposing country.
That's a risk, not one we've seen a ton of materializing yet, but it's one that has to sort of be in the back of our minds. So when we look at mining cyber attacks so far, 85-90% of the incidents are financially motivated criminals that just want your money. And that's pretty easy to understand. 5% are environmentally based. And the good thing is, just like the risks from, physical issues from environmental groups, the groups that will, chain themselves to a piece of equipment or to a mine gate or what have you, you can manage that risk pretty effectively by being a good citizen and working well with those groups and consulting with them and being a partner to those groups, just like you do to manage the other community risks. And so if you're doing a good job at your community risk management, your community engagement, you can control and reduce a lot of that risk yourself just by not having those groups that mad at you. So I think out of that's well within the control of most operators. The geopolitical one is a tricky one because the reality is no mining company, regardless of their size or their resources, can really be expected to stand up to a nation state themselves. And that's where participation in industry groups like MMISAC is important because we're in constant communication with the friendly countries' intelligence services. And so that puts us in a position to get that advance warning and that heads up that, hey, something might be brewing in this sector from this country, and get some good guidance on how you can deal with it, but also then vector in some of that expertise from the host country, whether it be here in Canada or others, to help you deal with that and get that extra help and resource. It's also where your resilience comes in. If you're resilient, then that nation state isn't going to be able to stop you. They're going to annoy you and inflict some pain, but they'll be able to stop you. They won't be able to stop you for sure if you've got that resilience plan in place that, hey, I can operate for a little while without my technology or without these key pieces of technology. And so that gives you that buffer, while whether it be us at MMISAC or your host country helps you deal with that nation state problem.
But to date, that nation state problem is pretty minimal. It's not a major threat such as the criminal organization is.
It's definitely a threat you've got to keep in mind and plan for, but the planning for it is your resilience plan. You're not going to try to scale up to fight that fight. Instead, you're going to focus on what you can control. And what you can control is your relationship with your communities. What you can control is your ability to be resilient. And so you focus on your operational resilience, the things within your control, the controllables. What a foreign national government might try to do, you can't control. And so you focus on what you can, and then have the access to help where you need it for the things you can't.
Okay, so that kind of downplays the current risk from a foreign government. Let's talk about two other kind of futuristic, although they're rapidly approaching today, potentials for risks, and let's talk about how real those risks are in today. Artificial intelligence. Is artificial intelligence going to be able to break down and get into people's systems easier and make them more reliant on their backup programs?
Artificial intelligence has huge promise. I think it's doing a lot, particularly in exploration and other areas, but certainly shows huge promises across the spectrum, across the value chain. And that's here today and is only going to get more impactful, I think, as time goes on. The challenge with artificial intelligence from the security perspective is twofold. Is number one is whenever we have the artificial intelligence robots doing something for us, there's a risk that we forget how to do it for ourselves. And so if something happens with that system, we have to turn it off. Can we do it manually? Is there an option for us to do it ourselves? And so remember, as I tell people, manual systems and human beings are naturally resilient. AI is not. In that, we've got this, get it done complex where if there's a roadblock, we try to find our way around it. If AI hasn't been told or trained on that particular unexpected roadblock, it won't know what to do with it and you'll be dead in the water. So it really requires you to think through what could go wrong and how do we do it. We don't tend to think about those things, and we have to. The other thing AI is doing is it's giving a bit of an advantage to the attackers, in that used to be we could spot phishing emails because they were horribly misspelt. The grammar, was terrible. Now, of course, with Grammarly, everybody can write a well-written, spelt correct, good grammar email, right? And so that's fine. AI tools can scrape the internet and LinkedIn and other things and find information to make that email more convincing and more accurate at scale that we couldn't do before. So while it helps us be more efficient, we have to be mindful of the impact of resilience, and it is also going to help our attackers, particularly the financially motivated people, be more efficient. So it's helping everybody, good and bad.
Okay, hopefully the resilience efficiency is greater than the attacking efficiency, and the good guys win, and the white and things don't spiral out of control. But the other topic, and I read about this, and it's also like the AI. It could be good or it could be bad, but it's quantum computing. I'm reading stuff that all of our passwords are going to be useless once quantum computers get here, and they seem to make it sound like they're like right on the doorstep and could be here tomorrow.
Yeah, it's definitely not a tomorrow problem. Yes, the biggest risk to quantum is things like passwords and other things not being available. But realistically, we give away our passwords all the time anyways, right? Whether it be through phishing or social engineering or somebody calling and saying, hey, I'm from tech support, I need to help you with something. It's more likely, even right now, that people will acquire passwords that are handed out versus cracked through quantum computing. And so, well, it's something to keep in mind, and it's really something to ask your vendors about. Are you planning for, hey, you've got my account information, I've got passwords and sensitive data with you. How are you planning for the post-quantum world that's coming? Maybe 3 to 5 years from now, before it's a problem at scale, which isn't forever by any stretch, but it's not tomorrow.
Okay, and you say 3 or 4 years, but do we need to be prepared for it today, for 3 or 4 years from now?
At the mining company level, for most operators, except for the largest ones, we're relying on our vendors to really handle and process most of the really sensitive information, right? We're using SAP or something for our corporate systems. We're using success factors for HR. We're using whatever. And so really for us, it's about asking those vendors what they're doing to ensure the information is safe when quantum becomes more mainstream. Really, when we're thinking about our own passwords and things, we should have resilience plans for what happens should somebody's password get lost or be stolen, whether that's, like I said, multi-factor authentication or other things, the ability to change passwords, what have you. Remember, quantum is just going to result in somebody's password getting stolen. Passwords are getting stolen today. And so the same resilience plans, the same defense plans for account information that we use, when passwords get leaked or stolen today, will be just as relevant or more important, post-quantum, when maybe that happens more often. But I think it's really the first defense against quantum is talk to your vendors and make sure you're doing the right things yourself. I think, and again, as an investor, it's about show me your risk and resilience plans at the enterprise level. Give me comfort you're managing it well at the board and the senior executive level, and that those plans are agile. And so you're adjusting as things change, as things come up.
Okay.
But the biggest mistake you could do is focus on quantum 3 to 5 years from now, and then get hacked tomorrow because you're not doing the basics right because you're worried about 3 to 4 years down the road.
Okay, it's like that, use a military term again. It's like the 1,000-yard stare a sniper has,
Right.
and they forget about what's right in their immediate vicinity.
I mean, quantum doesn't matter if you don't survive to get there, right?
That's true. Let's talk about the last line of security for cybersecurity. And I guess that's your own people. The larger your organization gets, the more people, the bigger the risk of somebody either accidentally or deliberately making your organization vulnerable. And I'm going to give you an example, and then let you kind of comment from there. There was an article in the BBC about a month to 6 weeks ago, where their cybersecurity writer was doing a research piece on protecting organizations against cyber criminals. And during the process of their research, they were actually approached by a hacking group that promised them a significant percentage of the payout that they would get from BBC if they were to allow them to break into the system and lock everything down. This person engaged the group for a bit and then reported it obviously to their superiors at the BBC. So nothing ever happened. But that's how organized these organized criminal organizations are. It's a business to them. So they pay this person a commission, they let him in through a back door and get a cut of the cake. So how important is it for a company to train their people in avoiding phishing attacks, protecting their passwords, kind of rooting out unhappy employees that'd be open and vulnerable to that kind of an approach? And there's there organizations that help companies deal with that.
Yeah, it's really important, but it's also important to be realistic about it, about your ability. The reality is, every one of your human employees are human, which means they got the capacity to make a mistake. That's the most human attribute of all of us. And so as you're planning that, the first case of the BBC article, and I did read that same one a bit more than a month ago. Disgruntled employees are a risk. Your best defense of that is to keep your employees fully gruntled and not have the disgruntled employees. But beyond that, yeah, managing those unhappy employees is important. But the training is important, and the training needs to be focused equal parts on here's what you want to look for and avoid, but also rewarding the reporting. Rewarding the person who reports and says, hey, this guy approached me, because that now allows you to do something. Rewarding the person who says, hey, I just got a phishing email, wanted to let you know, because 100 other people might have gotten that, and one of them might be tired or busy or distracted and click on it. So by people reporting it, it can get taken care of for all 100 other people. In particular, rewarding people who report that they've made a mistake. Your training should focus on encouraging people to put up their hand and say, yeah, I clicked on that link that in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have. Because that's what really aids your security versus a more punitive program, which trains people and uses fear to get people not to click on it. That'll make people less likely to report when they make a mistake. And so really working with employees to do that. And there's a number of companies that will help do that. And MMISAC helps that with our members. There's some great security awareness, security training, education companies, some of whom we partner with, that do a fantastic job of helping companies execute and run those training programs.
Perfect. I want to thank you for joining me today, Rob. It's been eye-opening in a lot of different levels, and this is I don't want to say it's a game, but it's a game that's got a changing playing field every day, month, week, year. And we're going to have lots to talk about in the future as things evolve and change. And I'd hope that we would get you back on again as situations crop up that need to be discussed. Now, if companies or individuals want to learn more about MMISAC, how would they do so, and what's the best way to get a hold of people at the organization?
You're welcome to pop over to our website, mmmisac.org. Kick it an email to info@mmmisac.org will work. And also on our website, if you want to keep up with issues that are happening in the industry, everybody's welcome to subscribe to our newsletter there. And that's free, and that comes out the second Monday of every month. So that's available for everybody as well.
Wonderful. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to having you on as a guest again.
Happy to, anytime.
The Prospector News Podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.